So let's get into round 15 of the English Premiership. I've already done videos on Northampton versus Leicester, Exeter versus Bath. Do check those out. The one I haven't been able to deep dive is the Saracens-Gloucester game, where Sarries blew them away with a really strong first half. So let me know if you went to that game, how it went. I'm going to get into the Sunday games. Bristol, Newcastle, Sale Sharks versus Harlequins. That was a thriller. Bristol 85, Newcastle 14 was a party for the Bristol fans, and they pack out Ashton Gate every home game, so they had a great time. But really, it was kind of an opposed team run, and that's not belittling Newcastle because they were that bad. Pat Lam has been telling Bristol to attack from everywhere, and they've been practicing their handling, their fast ball, and they got it on a plate here, and they look phenomenal. Are they going to look this good against anyone else? I'm not sure, but they have been playing very well in the last few rounds. Let me just emphasise how bad this Newcastle defence was. One thing you should be doing in defence, if you're in the right league, you should be making most of your tackles. And Newcastle missed so many terrible tackles. For example, Stephen started it, the winger, with a terrible missed tackle on Delango for the first try. Then a great line for Malins for the third try, but Newcastle were completely ball watching, didn't even tickle him. For the fifth try was James Williams, just a one-pass play. Conlon and young centre Spencer, I think it was, saw him coming, lined him up with a double tackle and still get brushed off. For the sixth try, Ellis Genge bumps off the massive second row Tim Cardell and then pushes his way past the fullback Redshaw like he's nothing. And the number of missed tackles for the Van Rensburg try just before half-time was ridiculous. Stevens again got run over by Nalango. Conlon as well. Sinclair turns into a pinball, looks like an absolute worldie. Tacklers bounce off him, and I am not overemphasising it. Newcastle's tackling was abysmal, possibly the worst I've seen in the Premiership. Let me know what you think, but I think it's really clear just from watching that first half that individual tackling was not good enough. Their best tackler, Guy Pepper, it's interesting he was on the bench. He's not there next year, so maybe they're trying to get players in who will be there next year. But I can see why Guy Pepper is leaving Newcastle. It's tough. They don't have the resources of the other teams, but they're not looking up to it. I don't think there's going to be relegation this season. I think technically there could be if a team from the Championship wins it who meets all the requirements of the Premiership, and I think that's only Doncaster at the moment who are in 5th. Ealing Trailfinders are the best team on the pitch, but I don't think they meet the regulations, certainly not in their ground. So Newcastle are safe, and they're very lucky on this performance because that was an absolute hammering. I guess Adam Radwan did show his pace with a good breakaway try, and we might see him in the Olympics for GB because he's going to go and train with them to see if he can make the grade, but very tough to make that transition so quickly. But in this first half, under 9 minutes, it was 21-0 and the game was pretty much over there. Before 10 minutes, the game is over. That's how bad it was. Watching the plays from Bristol, some simple wraparounds, it looked like Newcastle had only seen that move for the first time. They were getting done every single time. And yet it sounds disrespectful, but it did look like an opposed training run, and Bristol could run everything that had been practiced. Harry Randall looked like $1 million because there was no ruck pressure. Now, I was watching the missed tackles, but I was also watching the ruck contest. And on purpose, I'm sure it must have been on purpose, Newcastle did not contest the ruck. They didn't counter ruck. They fanned out, which is okay if you're a massive tackling team who can knock people behind the gain line. But it just gave Harry Randall great ball to do with what he wanted. And because they couldn't tackle out wide, it was a disaster. They didn't change it. I didn't even bother doing notes on the second half because it was that embarrassing for Newcastle. Pretty much the same. Finishes 85-14. Newcastle have to sort that out because that tackling, that defence is not good enough. Bristol, what a great practice. Big charge towards the playoffs. Yes, they're an all or nothing team, but surely better teams will stop them playing quite as much, not give them the freedom. But anyway, they fly up 2 places and sit in the playoffs with that win. Then on to Sale Sharks 37, Harlequins 31. A big blow for Harlequins, a big win for Sale Sharks at home. And goodness me, they look fresh. They looked absolutely ravenous for this game. They opened up the game with unstoppable attack, changing direction, silky smooth, George Ford fizzing passes everywhere. It was brilliant, brilliant clear-outs, beastie mauls. It was almost perfect, a stunning statement, and they roared into a 0-14 lead before Harlequins even knew what had happened. We know Harlequins have had a lot of rugby in the Champions Cup. Maybe that was a bit of it, I don't know. Travelling away obviously has a bit to do with it as well. But that's how you start a home game, 12-0. The first 15 minutes, the scrum was a big problem for Quins, and it carried on being a problem. I mean, in that beginning 15 minutes, they were getting folded up really badly. It looked like Dylan Lewis was struggling there with young James Harper against him, which is good signs for England because we need tight heads. So well done to James Harper. Bevan Rodd looks strong as well. The forwards, Dupree, Curry, they're swarming absolutely everywhere. Harlequins, they're desperately trying to get their good attack going. We know they've got a great attack, but Sale were all over them, stopping them playing. Quins trying absolutely everything, chips over the top, Dombrandt hitting lines, but they couldn't make anything stick. Tuolangi, on the other hand, was making gain line at will, triple tackle bursting, thrust, got them to 15-0. So a brilliant start in the first 15 minutes, and really Harlequins didn't quite recover. They tried, they kept on going, but they couldn't do it. Harlequins were really struggling to get over the gain line with their carries compared to Sale. Esterhazen was kind of their shining light, who did get over the gain line consistently, and he's going to be such a big miss when he goes away next season. I really wonder how they're going to replace him. But he hands off Aaron Reed, frees up space for Liner with a nice finish in the corner, so they do get on the board in about 23 minutes. Now, Harlequins are just desperate to play. You can see it, but Sale are making everything hard work, literally the opposite to what Newcastle did to Bristol. To be fair, Quins, they stuck at it. Tyrone Green, Dombrandt, they forged an impressive breakaway on 28 minutes, but Dombrandt goes for another miracle grubber, and they did that a bit in this game. They made some breaks, and then they just push it too far, trying to win it straight away, trying to score without going through the phases. So sometimes that extra pragmatism, I think it's what Harlequins need just to make that extra step, but they're still box office to watch. But despite it being hard work for Quins, one thing that Sale were giving them, or that Harlequins were winning, was lots and lots of penalties. That's a big one for Sale. They were looking dominant in contact, but they're giving away penalties, so there's not much point being dominant if you can't keep your discipline, and that gave Harlequins lots of possession, lots of territory. The Sale forwards are getting in lots of defensive work, and it looks pretty good, but they're leaking those penalties. So anyway, if you give any decent side lots of possession in your 22, then you're going to ask for trouble. The Harlequins forwards can't get anywhere on half an hour, but Tyrone Green, again with his quick feet, creates space, and Liner a really nice step and finish. So they actually bring it back to 15-10, but Sale have the last word, and their attacking shapes look really good, as you'd expect with George Ford commanding it. I'm sure he has a say in the attack as well, coaching-wise. One area that I think is really interesting for Sale is the way their backline complements each other. Where one player lacks, the other one makes up for it. You've got passing machines in War and Ford, but they're not, running, breaking half-backs. You don't have the quickest centres, but my God, Tuolangi hits hard lines. Dupree is like a hard 10 playing in the centres. Then they've got the pace out wide with Reed and Carpenter and some size with Roebuck. It just works. And a lovely play is finished with a long pass from Ford being flicked back inside to Reed for a really good try. So 22-10 at half-time. Well deserved. Now the second half is similar to the first, but with Harlequins getting more and more into the game. Their main man Esterhazen gets them going finally over the gain line, and Smith does really well to draw in two Sale forwards and put Cunningham South through a hole, and Murley finishes. So Harlequins clawing back into it. Another example of why Esterhazen is so key to them. That's 25-17. But Harlequins keep at it, more possession, and eventually Beard goes over once again. Sale making it hard work, but the pressure tells. So it's 25-24, a point in it. This is the key point of the game, and oh my God, Quins just got back into the game. Then straight off kick-off, Esterhazen takes forever on his clearance kick. The fresh winger O'Flaherty is on, he charges it down, and Rafi Quirk scoots over, so a massive momentum shift back to Sale just when Harlequins were starting to get things going. It did look like Sale might lose by the death of 1,000 cuts by all the penalties, but Harlequins kill themselves in one go there. Anyway, that shifts it towards Sale, and another example of why their backline complements each other, with Robert Dupree in centre, but he's got the skills of a fly half, gives them great passing range, and a beauty of a pass frees the arch finisher Reed again, and Sale are finishing stronger, but have plenty of chances to put the game to bed, and they don't. The scrum, though, is still crushing Harlequins. That is a massive area that Harlequins need to sort out if they're going to win something this season. Quins, to their credit, never give up, and they keep going through a bunch of phases, running it from everywhere, and eventually they free Murley with a great break, supporting Northmore scores. 37-31, but that is the game. Nearly came back, but not quite. That charge down maybe was the difference. But a huge win for Sale, catapulting them up 2 places in the table and reviving their playoff chances, and Quins get bumped out of the playoffs. So crazy stuff, great intensity, a perfect start for Sale, and then that charge down was enough, but they do need to sort out those penalties. Quins, they need to start a bit quicker on the road, they need to sort out that scrum, maybe they need to be a bit more pragmatic at time, but God, they're exciting to watch. So let me know what you thought of those Sunday games, all the comments below, and I'll catch you next time.